Oh, oh. On. Just run it back on the intro. You were muted at the beginning of the intro.
I was muted. Okay, here we go.
All right. Here.
Ready, and we'll restart. There we go. Welcome back, everybody, into the Let's Talk Weekly post-game show. I am your host, Robbie Haytayan. Joined with me are my two co-hosts, Seamus Zarlingo and Nick Franco. Guys, we're a little late on this one, 2 days late in the Celtics tip-off here, actually just in an hour. So we're going to have a little double header for you guys today. But
hybrid.
Yes, right. A little 2-in-1. Consider this our early Christmas gift to you guys. The Boston Celtics faced off against Los Angeles Clippers on Sunday at the TD Garden at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, guys. The Celtics, they walked away with a 121-118 victory. Boston finally improving back to 500 as they pick up their second straight win. Boston will face off against the Brooklyn Nets later tonight. We'll talk about that later on in this post-game show. But guys, as for that matchup on Sunday afternoon, what did you guys like and see out of the Boston Celtics in their win against LA?
I love the lead until the end, I will say. That was, for most of the game, one felt good about what the Celtics were doing until the end. And this has just been the problem with the team all year long, is the consistency. It's the full 48 minutes. Did we see the full 48 minutes in this game against Los Angeles? Unfortunately, we did not. Okay, we saw about 40 good minutes. And I don't even want to say 40 good minutes. It was really, 36 good minutes? It was good 3 quarters, if that. And the third quarter got a little, the second half in general got a little out of hand for the Celtics. And just goes back to the conversation that we have a lot on this program, is the personnel of the team. It's going to cause inconsistencies within how this team plays all season long. And we saw it come out in yet another game. However, this was a game I flagged right before it happened. I went, remember we were on that Memphis live stream and was going, there's a lot of size to the Clippers, a lot of athleticism. You know, they're obviously experienced as well, and that could be a problem for the Celtics, especially that size. Well, the Celtics in the game, ultimately, if we look at some of the numbers on the night, looking at some of the game charts, the Celtics in the rebounding category, they actually won the rebounding category, and points in the paint as well, 54-46 in favor of the Celtics, and the Celtics 49-44 in the rebounding category. But the fast break points, the Celtics outran the Clippers in this game 22-9 in the fast break category. And if we look at some of the defensive and offensive rebounds in this game, offensively, the Clippers only grabbed 10 offensive rebounds. The Celtics grabbed 20. So that's a huge margin for the Celtics. Now, defensive rebounding, Clippers were a little bit better there, but offensive rebounding wise, the Celtics, now, did they capitalize on a bunch of second chance points? No, they did win that category 22-20, but grabbing those extra offensive rebounds, you look at the shot total in this game, 103 for the Celtics, 81 for the Clippers. That's a huge discrepancy, and that's what it's about, is taking more shots than the other team. That's your bottom line in a game. You want to take more opportunities, and good opportunities at that, than your opponent. And the Celtics have done a great job at that all season long, even amidst some of the rebounding struggles. Yet there was no rebounding struggle in this game for the Celtics, and it actually helped them in the end win the game. They won that category. They were able to win in transition, and throughout the night they were the better team than the Clippers. The Clippers were able to come back at the end, but throughout most of the game, it did feel as if the Celtics were in relative control. However, we all know the new era of the NBA doesn't exactly lend itself to a team, even with a 20-point lead, controlling throughout. There's always going to be huge ebbs and flows with the pace and points that the three-pointers involved as well. And this game definitely displayed some of the Celtics trends, but also just league trends as well. And at the end of the night, I'm sure the Celtic fan base is just glad the Celtics came out with a win, because James Harden had a chance to send it into overtime when a lot of us thought at halftime that was not going to be in the realm of possibilities.
Well, you saw what the Celtics need to do to win games, and you saw what the Celtics need to do to lose games. In one game a few nights ago, you saw the Boston Celtics against the Los Angeles Clippers team, who their average age is 33.2 years old. Not the freshest legs out there. So you got to be able to utilize what this team has based their whole identity behind, which is being able to develop these young guys and being able to compete with these older teams and being able to develop them to stand toe-to-toe with these guys. One of the major things that I noted heading into this game was going to be the battle against Zubac and Brook Lopez, the two centers for the Los Angeles Clippers, and Neemias Queta. And Neemias Queta handled himself fairly well against the two centers, going 14-9 with 9 boards. And I think that looking at this game, you started to see the Celtics use that pace in the beginning portions of the game, running the court, being able to create transition opportunities for themselves, being the more athletic and young team to create these spurts. And they were well rested heading into this game, and they were able to walk away. But once the third and fourth quarter came around, that's when the veteran experience of the Clippers started to bite the Celtics a little bit. You start to see those slip-ups and calls, and the minor mistakes were being exploited by the veterans like James Harden, and they were able to create some stretches that put the Celtics into a crisis control situation in those final few minutes of the game. And luckily enough, the ball bounced the wrong way, and the luck of the Celtics is going to hopefully help them win a few games this year, and they're definitely going to need it, especially when it comes down to these late game situations, because allowing opportunities like that at the end of the game is going to – the ball is going to bounce the other way at some point, and we're going to see much more of that as the season goes forward if we continue to see inconsistencies.
Yeah, I think honestly the first half of that game might have been my favorite half of basketball this team has played all season. I mean, and really the past couple of games, they're finally starting to have an offensive identity, and it's clear. They're attacking the paint more. They're taking more better quality shots. There isn't this just weird running gun offensive scheme where you dribble for 13 seconds, you do a couple high screen and rolls, and then you take a contested three that we saw really through the first 10 or 12 games a lot. But you know, here we are the past, I'd say 3-4 games. We have seen the Celtics team, you know, produce from an offensive standpoint. I think we saw that. And I even think we saw that in the third and fourth quarter. They were trying, the shots just really weren't falling. And that's why I was watching it. And there were two factors. The refs were blowing that third quarter, guys. I was there live at the Garden. That third quarter was dreadful to watch. There was, I believe, 12 fouls called from both teams in that quarter. It was averaging a foul a minute. It's slowed the pace of play down. And I think LA, obviously being the older team, just absolutely going to take advantage of that. They did take advantage of that. Boston, led by Jaylen Brown, I thought did a great job at responding when they need to respond. Yes, they did make it close. Harden went absolutely berserk in that fourth quarter to give LA the chance. You know, that happens. Boston executed. They pulled away. I thought there were a lot of positives to pull out of this game. I'm not too upset with the run LA went on because of those two factors. Boston, from an offensive standpoint, stayed true to what they've been doing. They were still going through the process. Their intentions were there. Shots weren't falling. And the second one is just that the whistles. I mean, the refs were just blowing the whistle every single chance they got. I think that slowed the game down, like I said, and LA was able to kind of get themselves back into a position to make this a closer game. Guys, let's take a look at the lead tracker. With that being said, obviously a couple factors into what happened, what transpired down the stretch for the Celtics and the Clippers to make it a close game, guys. However, the Clippers never led Sunday afternoon in the TD Garden. Boston led by as many as 24 points. You can see there halfway through that third quarter was Boston's largest lead. The game was only tied once early on in the first quarter. And then again, green wave, guys, it was just all C's throughout LA. They went on some runs. They got it close, but not close enough to capture the victory. Boston obviously pulling away with the win at the end, as we know, guys. Again, Boston in that back stretch of that third quarter, early fourth quarter, and into really the last 2 minutes of that fourth quarter, we saw them kind of let the lead dwindle. I touched on it a little bit. You guys touched on it also a little bit. So just if you guys were to put your finger on that kind of one thing Boston was lacking during that Clippers run, what kind of allowed LA to get back into a game and make it close? And then also, what did you like and what did you see out of Boston in that start of that third quarter, halfway through that second quarter, that allowed them to extend their lead?
Well, looking at some of the third quarter numbers here, I want to say the fouls in the third quarter, you mentioned them, 13. You said 12. How about another one? How about another whistle?
It was unwatchable. It was, I was at the game and I was like, oh, I think it was a 50 real minutes of time to get through that. It was unwatchable.
Basketball, I don't want to turn this into a grand scheme conversation about basketball, but nobody wants to see players shooting free throws. Nobody wants to see pixels, the little tiny pixels. Did this go out? Did it hit off this guy? Did what happened here? Nobody wants to see guys drinking Gatorade. What we want to see is basketball being played, players playing basketball. It's what everybody comes to the arena to see. I mean, it's getting a little out of hand. The review, I mean, not a little out of hand. It's been out of hand for years. The reviews, the foul calls, especially at the end of games. I mean, I go out in public. My area, I gotta admit, I'm from St. Louis. Not a huge basketball town. There's not a professional basketball team here. People love Tatum, but it's really college football, a lot of football, right? Well, ultimately, a lot of these football watchers, when they watch basketball, I see the public interaction. I see the public reaction from it when I'm out and about. A basketball game's on, and I know all these football watchers, they're watching it. Oh, the final minute of a college basketball game or an NBA game, it's going to take 20, 30 minutes. It happened on Sunday, actually, with this game. On Sunday, this game, well, let's fit. Well, everybody it is Sunday. What am I talking about? It is Sunday, folks. Be quiet, But anyway, on Sunday, it happened with this game at the end. At the end. Live, exactly, live, folks. But to bring up some of the third quarter numbers, I do want to highlight within the third quarter, the Celtics, two guys contributed to the Celtics woes when it came to their shooting numbers in that third quarter. So the Celtics, they took 8 more shots than the Clippers in that quarter. They took 27 field goal attempts. The Clippers took 19 in that third quarter. However, the Clippers shot 11 of 19. The Celtics shot 11 of 27. So with 8 extra shots, the Celtics made 0 extra shots than the Clippers. As from three-point land, the Celtics took 4 more threes and actually hit 2 more. So they were in the plus category there. However, the 2 players I'm going to highlight here, and I might even extend it to 3, Neemias Queta, 0 of 4 in that third quarter. Derek White, 1 of 6. So between those 2 guys, they were 1 of 10. And if you want to add Hauser in there, and those guys played somewhat significant minutes. Derek White, 7.5 minutes. Queta, about 7 minutes. Pritchard played the whole quarter. He was phenomenal. 5 of 6, 4 of 5 in that quarter, contributed to his total for the night. 14 points in that fourth quarter, or rather, third quarter for Peyton Pritchard. But if you were to add Sam Hauser into the mix, who played 3.5 minutes in that third quarter, that would be 1 of 12 between Hauser, White, and Queta. Those are contributing. Those are 3 championship players, right? 3 champions. Those are the guys who are supposed to be contributing. They're shooting 1 of 12 in that third quarter, and the Celtics are taking 8 more shots, yet making the same amount of shots. That's going to be an issue. That's just from a mathematical standpoint. But we talked about the rebounding category. This is where it slacked off a little bit for the Celtics. 3 offensive rebounds in that third quarter for the Clippers, 14 rebounds overall, 11 defensive rebounds. The Celtics only grabbed 8 rebounds in that third quarter, 3 defensive rebounds. The Celtics had more offensive rebounds in the third quarter than defensive rebounds. So that kind of paints a picture of how the Celtics were losing that rebounding battle in the third quarter. And then when they're actually, with some of their extra shots from some of the turnovers in which the Celtics were forcing, because in that third quarter, the Celtics still forced 4 turnovers to their 0. So they were winning that turnover battle there. They were taking extra shots. They weren't making their extra shots. They were losing the rebounding battle. And we saw on that lead tracker, the Celtics to start that third quarter looked great. Coming out of half, the Celtics didn't finish the half all that great. Still maintained a significant lead, as we saw at the time, for themselves against a team at half. They came out in the third quarter, established that 24-point lead, and then just going to, I mean, you could see it in that lead tracker, just goes downhill until that fourth quarter hits, and it was a 5-point game. And when you're going into the fourth quarter, 5 points or that's two possessions. You're 2 possessions apart from another team. It's anybody's game at that point in time with 12 minutes left to play. So a couple of factors there didn't go the Celtics' way in that third quarter. And that's why we saw that weird avalanche that, well, looks like a mountain. I mean, the Celtics, they climbed that mountain and they went right back down. And fortunately, they didn't reach base camp. They didn't fall down the mountain entirely, but at the same time they didn't exactly stay at the Everest's peak for too substantially long.
There's just, I mean, can we get this team to get hot at the same time? I mean, can these guys create a generic flow on the court? We all have played basketball within this program before. When the team is able to score and everyone is contributing in their fashion of being able to get to their looks that they know they're comfortable with, and they have that formality with each other to create that unconscious, you know where the guy is going to be when the play is drawn up. That's what this team needs to continue to develop, because it seems like it's almost one guy's on and then another guy's off type of situation with the Boston Celtics offense. You will get a few guys contributing in the game, but when those guys are contributing, it almost seems like the other players that are shut off from being able to find their looks. I mean, the players that we highlighted in the third quarter are Derek White, Sam Hauser, and Nehemias Queta, and those are guys that Derek White, as we know, when he is at his best, you walk down the streets of Boston, there are people still saying that Derek White is a player that could be stepping up to be an all-star, and that is his expectation. Is that a little bit too high of expectations? Quite possibly, because he is being elevated into a role that he is not accustomed to compared to years in the past. Likewise with a guy like Sam Hauser. We all know how capable a player like Sam Hauser is when he is being that sharpshooter for this team, but when he is expected to be a second to third option on the court at once, then there's going to be a little bit of an issue. And also, a player that we haven't even brought up yet is Anthony Simons, who was struggling from the floor. Didn't really even find his spot. And when we look at him and Pritchard, we've kind of seen them as a platoon swap on the court. They are not two players that we see the Boston Celtics ever lifting up a Larry O'Brien with them both wearing a Celtics jersey. Unfortunately, that just won't be the case, because they are just two players that are too similar, and it's both their weakness being on the defensive end is something that you just cannot be missing with both of them on your floor and on your roster.
Well, I'll tell you what they did in that, late back half of the second, early third, was they rebounded the basketball, they played defense, and they pushed the pace, right? Jordan Walsh did a phenomenal job once again in that starting lineup against James Harden and to disrupt that Clippers offense. And I think Boston, alongside Jaylen Brown and Derek White and Peyton Pritchard, did a phenomenal job pushing the pace. Luka Garza had himself a great game, fouled out in that, I believe, that third quarter, back half of that, maybe the early fourth, can't really remember. So I think that's what they were doing when they were, going on those run. And then kind of what costed them was they were trying to do those things continuously, but it just wasn't quite there. Again, whistles, stop that fast pace. Like Seamus mentioned, LA was rebounding the basketball on the offensive end of the floor, getting more shots. Baskets started to get a little bit bigger for the Clippers, obviously following to that Clippers run. Again, I do think Boston did a great job, especially Jaylen Brown checking back into that fourth quarter and extending that lead back up to 8, 9, 10 points to really keep LA at a striking distance. And then eventually that striking distance just fell short. So as for the second quarter, Boston did a great job at rebounding, playing defense and pushing the pace to get to the basket. In the third quarter, I think Boston was still trying to do those things. They didn't steer away. Just sometimes you're trying to do things and you just can't execute those things. But I believe as time goes on, Boston will get better at executing those things. Franco, you bring up a good point. And, I believe we talked about it before the show started. Seamus, you mentioned this to us. And quite frankly, I'd agree. The takeaway of last Sunday's game, or this past Sunday's game, was really what the hell is going on with Anthony Simons. I mean, he was a complete cone out there. I want to blame him for his poor performance, but at the same time, I kind of feel for him because there was no chance to get an offensive rhythm, and that's who he is. He's an offensive, a scorer. He is a player that really needs to be in a rhythm to get going. He's a shooter. He's a volume scorer, and the volume wasn't there for Anthony Simons, guys. This past Sunday, Simons against the Clippers, he played just about 12 minutes. He had no points, no rebounds, 2 assists, no steals, no blocks, 0 for 3 from the floor, 0 2 from deep, was a -1 on the box plus minus. Again, guys, we talked about it so much. Anthony Simons is a guy that we all had such high expectations for coming into the season. He gets brought off the bench in a first ever 6-man role. And now it feels like the Celtics and Joe Mazzulla have just absolutely ran this guy's confidence into the ground. Where are we at with the Anthony Simons experience? Has Joe Mazzulla and the Boston Celtics ruined this player?
How did Portland give Anthony Simons $27 million per year is my question. At what point, and I'm not saying this as Anthony Simons isn't worth $27 million right now he's not. Now, in the past, maybe that he was, right? That's what I'm saying is in the past, there was a potential point in which he was worth $27 million, but why was he worth $27 million? That's what I want to figure out, because if there's a why behind that, the Celtics can use that why within their rotation or even the trade market later on in the season. At this point, I don't understand where the Simons tangent relationship is going. I mean, for me, it's going in a direction of potentially dumping him at the deadline or keeping him past the deadline, maybe getting him on a cheaper deal next year, or just letting him walk in general. There doesn't seem to be an actual path for Anthony Simons to succeed on this basketball team the way this relationship is forming at this moment in time. But that's why I want to figure out what is the why behind Anthony Simons receiving $27 million per year from the Blazers. What was that why, and how can the Celtics bring that why to their rotation, to their team? Because right now, Anthony Simons isn't worth $27 million. The team isn't trading for that contract, and he's probably not going to sign for that much next summer. But I just wonder, is that due to his actual talent? Somewhat. But how much of it is due to how the Celtics are dealing with him right now, dealing with Simons within the minutes he's getting? It's a confusing situation. I don't agree with it. I understand coaches have their philosophies, their standards, their expectations. Okay, we all do. We have them within our own program. And quite frankly, if you're not meeting those standards and those expectations, then you're not going to be in the rotation. It's about as simple as that. And that could be where Anthony Simons is within the Celtics rotation and the hierarchy of Joe Mazzulla. Joe Mazzulla might be looking at Simons and going, well, he's not making these defensive rotations. He's not exactly playmaking. He's not making these plays on the offensive end of the floor that we want him to make. He's not exactly doing what we want him to do off ball. And it might not be he's not doing what we want him to do. It might be he can't do some of the things we want him to do off ball or defensively. And he's not meeting those physical expectations, those physical standards of the Celtics. That's quite possible right now, and people are pointing that out. But what I'm going to point out here is the guy's making $27 million. You traded Drew Holiday for him. He's 26 years old, still a moldable guard. Are the Celtics just giving up on him at this point in time, saying, well, we'll let him walk the free agency or we're going to dump him? And that's where this is going. They're either going to dump him or letting him walk in free agency, and they might get him back on a cheaper deal. But after this experience, if this continues throughout the season and there's no dumping at the deadline because you can't dump him at the deadline, why would Simons want to return to the Celtics on a cheap deal? There's no why wouldn't he want to go somewhere else where he could actually mine an opportunity for himself, like the opportunity that was out there for him in Portland for so many years before eventually Portland traded him away to the Celtics? So the Simons situation at this moment in time, it's where it was really a week ago still, and it's actually getting worse. It's getting worse. Let's face it, folks. It's getting way worse. 12 minutes, and the game again. Remember Orlando? I mean, he scores 25 points before half. Doesn't even see any minutes in the second half. I mean, this relationship is. You see what he can be, but he's not that fully, and it's really up to both parties, in my opinion. It's Anthony Simons' ability, but it's also the coaching staff. However, I'm going to put a little bit more on the coaching staff for not getting more out of a player who clearly had more and clearly had a why behind why the Portland Trailblazers paid him $27 million per year.
And that why still exists. That why 100% still exists. I mean, we've seen it with our very own eyes what he is capable of doing from a physical and tangible basketball point of view. He is a player who could be someone who could be viewed as a primary scorer on the court, and honestly is something that the Celtics could be utilizing. And I mean, they already had someone within that role in Peyton Pritchard before the trade even happened, and Drew Holiday, a little bit different of a player, was much more of a defensive-minded player and a much more versatile player, one of the more versatile players in the NBA in recent years. And now you're switching over to Anthony Simons, and he is someone that you could probably pull out a handful or two handfuls of teams that would be interested in the services of Anthony Simons, a player that can score 20 points on a given night and being able to be a facilitator and also can help choreograph an offense. There are plenty of teams that would sign up to match them up in their backcourt. And I mean, Anthony Simons shouldn't have even worn a Boston Celtics jersey in the first place. When I saw him even make it into the Celtics media day, I knew that there was a big mess up with this. I knew that this was out of place. You look at it financially, you look at it logistically, you look at it from a personnel standpoint. The whole overall situation was just a incomplete mess, and it has led to a player being put in a opportunity where they are lesser of a player and a position where a team has a player that they are getting lesser of value from because they are expected to pay $27.8 million, and Anthony Simons is in a position where he can bring $7.8 million of value to the Boston Celtics. So, and also if the Celtics walk away from the trade deadline and Anthony Simons is on this roster, it is almost a guarantee that he is walking out those doors and not re-signing on a contract. I don't think he is at a point in his career and in his lifetime that he should be out there accepting lesser value. I mean, we saw players, I mean, this offseason was a little bit different when you look at players like Cam Thomas, Josh Giddey, and players of that echelon, Quentin Grimes. They were all restricted free agents. He is an unrestricted free agent. So almost any team that has some salary and can see that value to bring in a player that is entering, the biggest thing we were looking forward to the guy is his age. He is still a player that has just about to peak and reach into his peaks. So who knows what that second contract looks like, and it's probably his last big chance of getting good money. But you look at Anthony Simons, he is a player that has to be traded from this roster because we've seen more than enough talent walk away from this team in the past 365 days and not getting anything in return. And it's getting to a point where it's becoming detrimental to this team. We knew that this team was going to be taking just losses in talent in general, but to make it to a point where you are genuinely having players walk away with nothing in return and not even assets, picks, and Simons walk away, that just becomes dead money. That doesn't have an immediate effect on the Celtics luxury cap. That doesn't bring them a little bit closer to the first apron immediately. it is just more that the Celtics are going to have to deal with, and it's a bullet that they would have to be biting for no reason. So Brad Stevens' phone has to be getting hot. He has to be dealing with a service bill by the end of December, because he's got to be ringing up teams like the Western Conference, which is a hodgepodge of teams competing to be in that play-in tournament. Team, as we've said, teams 1 through 12 in the West are vying for an opportunity, and Anthony Simons is probably the best rental player on the market in the NBA going into this trade deadline. So there's going to be teams vouching and putting together offers. I'm sure that there will be multiple offers on the table for the Celtics for Anthony Simons. What they're getting in value is going to be determined and might deteriorate if depending on how the Celtics continue to use him. But do I think that his Celtic experience is what the teams around the NBA and what people should be judging him off of? Absolutely not, because it's just an absolute misfit.
It is. And let's look at this from two different perspectives, right? One, the Anthony Simons perspective. Comes to Boston, he's adapted to a new role, and I think that's been a hurdle for him. So I think in the next month and a half,
you think it's a role he even wanted?
January, after that is going to be a real test for him, and it will be a deciding factor on whether or not he is shipped off. And another perspective coming from the Anthony Simons camp is I think Simons is about to fall victim yet again to the second apron. Simons is not going to get paid. He is not going to see $26 million, $27 million this upcoming season, this offseason, rather, if it's an extension from Boston or if he is signing to a new team. We've seen multiple players, Norman Powell and more, come out and say, listen, the second apron essentially is only paying the superstars. And they're absolutely right. The NBA, the NBPA, the National Basketball Players Association, absolutely screwed the mid-level players and really sunk their market value. We saw so many times, really from 2016 to 2022, these mid-level players, these role players, just getting $20, $25 million. With under the second apron, teams, and the Boston Celtics were your example of it, guys. The league made an example out of it with the Boston Celtics. You can't afford to do that. You can't afford to pay your superstars and your bench guys. So I think Anthony Simons is going to be looking at a market value right around $10 million. And so I think from a Boston Celtics standpoint, Franco, you're absolutely right. Do the Celtics explore using that $26 million to bring in more substance? Seamus, this is a conversation we've had. Maybe it's two $10 million players, right? Maybe you throw a first-round pick alongside Anthony Simons to bring back something of value in a trade, because I don't believe you can afford to lose him for nothing. And then if you do decide to keep him, there needs to be something needs to give with Anthony Simons. This is a player that cannot be playing 12 minutes a game. He is simply too offensively gifted for that to be the case. There is no reason why Baylor Shireman should be logging 18 minutes and Anthony Simons should be logging 12. In no world does that make sense. Did Anthony Simons have a pretty poor game Sunday against the LA Clippers? Absolutely. But he is a player you kind of have to ride. You can't afford to throw Anthony Simons on the bench when he's playing bad and say, okay, you're going to sit there and we're going to roll a Shireman. He's too good. He's too talented, and his play style will crumble. You give a player like Anthony Simons that the bench time, the whole bench sit down and think about what you've done role, he is going to lose his confidence. It's just the type of player that he is. He is a volume scorer. Volume scorers need to see the court, they need to see the ball, and they need to see their shots. Otherwise, things are going to take a turn. Boston is playing with fire right now with Simons. If they keep having his minutes teeter, the value isn't going to be there. If the value's not there, you are losing not just Drew Holiday for nothing, but you are losing another 26-year-old asset that could have turned to something of substance for nothing. So Boston needs to be careful. And Anthony Simons, if you're only going to play 12 minutes, you have to find a way to be as productive as possible in those minutes. Otherwise, you're not going to get paid this offseason, and you're going to find yourself riding the bench on the Celtics squad, even though I think it is absolutely malpractice to see what Joe Mazzulla has done and how he has managed Anthony Simons in the Boston Celtics uniform. That said, when Peyton Pritchard was playing the way he was on Sunday, it's pretty tough to take him out. And this is part of the problem. If you can't have Pritchard and Simons on the court and you got Pritchard doing what he's been doing, then you kind of got to bench Simons, and that's just a waste of $26 million. However, on the flip side, we have seen Anthony Simons have some explosive games, and Peyton Pritchard still sees his normal minutes. So there needs to be a clear direction. Again, I think it's going to take time because I was hounding on Missoula to figure out with the offense. Missoula eventually, it looks like they're starting to find an identity. So I'm going to give a little bit of pass and leeway on this one. I'll be a little bit less harsh for the time being. I'll give it some more time. I'm sure we're definitely going to revisit at some point this offseason, guys. But next, I kind of want to talk about the big men. Because quite frankly, I'm starting to get really, really impressed with what I'm seeing out of these big men. This is a position where we were very, very worried. I was on record alongside you, Seamus, and maybe even you, Franco, calling this just the worst position core in the NBA. And here we are, fast forward a couple months, almost done with November here, and that big man core of Neemias Queta and Luka Garza is starting to show some light, guys. Neemias Queta in Sunday's matchup against the LA Clippers, 14 points, 9 rebounds, 2 stocks, 1 steal, 1 block. Luka Garza, 13 points, 4 rebounds, and he did foul out 6 fouls there in that third quarter. He did knock down 2 threes. Again, both of them playing some very solid basketball, guys. Now, do you see a consistent starter out of one of these two pieces? Are we confident with what we're seeing out of our big man core?
I think right now, the meter, right? If we're filling up the meter to can a big man become a consistent starter, the meter is starting to fill up a little bit for specifically Queta. Garza is more in the range of, can you be a bench guy first, and then we'll talk about you becoming a starter. Now, granted, if Queta, if he's injured at any moment in time, which, God forbid, Garza's going to have to step into that role because there's nobody else. I mean, you have Tillman. Tillman's barely getting his time out there, and he's been in and out with, I'm not exactly sure.
He's got the Al Horford toe. It got passed down to him.
Well, I thought, now this is, correct me if I'm wrong, was he the one who missed for personal reasons the other night? I don't remember. Celtics injury report, hard to remember who's on it all the time. This season we've been pretty good with it, but regardless, Tillman, he's not been in the equation as much, and it's up to Queta and Garza, and they've both been handling their own for consistent stretches, I would say now. And I think it's coming with a lot of the repetitions. When you're playing those high minutes consistently, they're going to pick up some things. They're going to develop in ways that they wouldn't when they're just sitting on the bench, or say Luka Garza if he were playing in Maine or formerly playing in Iowa, right? So ultimately, those guys you can see the development within their games. Queta, he's becoming an interesting, okay, I see the Cornet here. Not necessarily not as if he plays like Cornet, but hey, could Queta maybe make $10 million in the league one day? Would a team want to throw him a small contract, a deal that made sense for a big man to maybe come off the bench and back up another big and maybe play a Twin Tower system at times? I could see Queta being that valuable big into the future. I think he's starting to show those intangibles, especially around the rim. I'm loving Queta's rebounding, his effort around the rim. There are still some technical issues with him when he's rolling, some of his timing. He's getting better at these things, but there's still, if you look at some of the more experienced bigs in the league, say, the Celtics in this game, they face Zubac, kind of want to be at Zubac levels. Now, I understand Zubac, he's not the perfect prototype of a big because he's not necessarily perimeter oriented, but that's where Queta's at. He's not a perimeter oriented big, and you can see some of the molding and the forming of his game to become more like a player like Zubac. He's not going to have that same size, granted, but some of the same mechanical aspects of the game. Garza, on the other hand, I think he can be a little bit more of a stretch big at times. We saw him make 2 threes. He's pretty comfortable shooting the ball. The form, he's got a little bit of an awkward body, just a little bit. So the form looks, a little strange at times. He's one of those, his arms are super long. So, when he hoists the ball up there, it just feels like it's so far away from him. But he's a player I think the Celtics can mold into at least. These guys are so cheap. You want to keep them at least on the bench. And that's where they're getting massive value out of these players. The huge conversation with the big man core is the fact there wasn't a starting big man. But that's what we want to be clear about on the show is even though the Celtics, they might have entered the season with the worst big man core, that was because they didn't have a starting big man. They didn't have big number one, right? And all the guys behind him, we didn't know what kind of production. Now we're starting to see production from two guys who could be undoubtedly a 2-3 off the bench, number 2, number 3 big off the bench. And if you slot in somebody like later on down the line, I know we're talking about the trade deadline, maybe a Jaren Jackson, who knows, and maybe some of the expiring, maybe a Nikola
I gotta ask
Vucevic
this:
out there, right?
You guys have been jazzed on Jaren Jackson recently.
Give me
he's
Jaren.
Both of you.
Give me Jaren.
He's the one where I'm like, can we just put him in a different situation, a real competent basketball situation, and see what he looks like? Because I never felt as if Morant and Jaren Jackson made sense together. I understood good teams, they worked well off each other at moments, but it just long term, I just want Jaren Jackson is like a third best player to me. He's a third best or even a fourth best. He's an Al Horford type. When Al Horford would say playing on the 16-17 Celtics or the 17-18 Celtics, that era of Al Horford, not when he came back ultimately, but before he left the first time. I was thinking about this last. Al Horford left again. How did that happen? I mean, I still can't believe it. But regardless, Al Horford, the first iteration of Al Horford with the Celtics, that's where I see Jaren Jackson in the NBA. I see him as this third, fourth best player. He can be maybe your best player on some nights, given his defensive ability, being an anchor, and then on the offensive end of the floor, hitting a couple shots from deep, going to work in the post, making a couple of great reads to guys on the perimeter, finding guys open on the perimeter. I think Jaren Jackson would fit quite nicely with two players such as Brown and Tatum, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. I don't know why I had to specify their first names as if people didn't know who I was talking about, but gotta give respect to our pillars. But Jaren Jackson, I think, would be you never know. You never know. But say Jaren Jackson is your starting big. You have Kata off the bench, Garza off the bench. All of a sudden, I mean, we're cooking. I mean, the Celtics, I just want to point out right now, the Celtics in the betting market, because I mean, the market tells you where teams are essentially, right? In terms of what and I want to say the public, but it's all of the information available out there. What the market thinks of the Celtics are slowly inching into the category of miraculously a top 10 team. And the reason why is not necessarily because of the Celtics, like, oh, wow, the Celtics are so good. It's all of the relativity. There's no great teams out in the NBA landscape. There's a vacuum of power in the NBA right now. The Celtics do make a move and find that starting level big man. You have a Kata and a Garza there. The Celtics are all of a sudden right back into contention, especially if you bring, Franco, I mentioned this to you on the phone earlier. There's a world where the Celtics trade off Anthony Simons and somehow acquire a big in that deal. Maybe it's not a long-term big. Maybe it's a rental big like Vucevic. Who knows? But maybe there is a bigger deal that involves maybe Jaren Jackson or even a bigger name out there with Anthony Simons, with other assets involved. All of a sudden, you have your starting big man there. Maybe Tatum comes back later in the season. The Celtics, they're the 4 seed, they're the 3 seed. The top 2 seeds haven't really established themselves. And then the Celtics enter the playoffs as maybe a favorite in the East. There's a world where that exists. Now, that's a very, that's a very wishful way of looking at things. That's the best case scenario. Like, you look at the bell curve, like that's the best case for Celtic fans, right? But that does exist. It's within the realm of possibilities, and and I don't want to say it's simple transactions away, but it's 2 transactions away.
It's one good day in February away from being back in the conversation. This roster, like we've been saying with Simons, there are plenty of big men. I don't know if a Vucevic, and it also determines what Simon's value is going to be. If you is Anthony Simons even enough to pull away a player like Jaren Jackson Jr.? You'd probably, knowing salaries, I know Jaren Jackson, I'm assuming, is probably making somewhere around 35 million to 40 million.
35 on the dot. I'm looking at it right now.
So you'd have to package probably a Hauser in with the Simons to even make those types of deals. But And
so that's funny. I'm on, all right. I'm on the trade machine right now as we speak. I hate to out myself, but I am. Shout out to Spotrac, because they're brand new this year. And well, to me at least, they're brand new. Guys, hypothetically speaking, and I don't want to get off track here, but hypothetically speaking, Jaren Jackson getting sent to the Celtics. Do the Grizzlies say no to Simons, Hauser, and 2 first-round picks, both unprotected in the years of 2027 and 2031? It's like, if you're Memphis and then you can maybe you ship Jaw off too, you're getting an expiring Anthony Simons who is extension eligible, who you can kind of go out there and hoop for a little bit. You get those 2 draft picks alongside the value you could get from John Moran. It's like, there's substance there. Does that do the trick? If I'm Boston, that's a phone call I'm making.
I think there's going to be a little bit more. I think in that Jaren Jackson deal, I think the Grizzlies could look at it as, well, yeah, we're getting Simons with the salary, the expiring salary. There could be a world where they look at it and go, well, Simons, he's expiring. He might leave us during the summer, which would leave the Grizzlies with Sam Hauser and 2 first-round picks. Is that enough of a long-term get for Jaren Jackson? I would think the Grizzlies probably would want another first on that, maybe even another on top of that, maybe even a Peyton Pritchard as well. That's when things get really dicey. But you have to consider it if you're the Celtics from a certain standpoint, because that's the price to pay for good players is not cheap. I'll say that. And Jaren Jackson is a good player. So you're probably talking with that, but then I just believe too, what are the well, this is just standard. What are the offers elsewhere going to be? We don't know yet, but if there are no offers out there for Jaren Jackson Jr. and that's the only one on the table, do the Grizzlies feel a need to do that? Do they hold back from that? Does a bidding war start for Jaren Jackson? How high are the Celtics willing to go to get a premium big man? It's hard to say what the future could look like in that regard, but Simons has to start most conversations when it comes to trading anybody because he has the salary.
Or you could go crazy and say White. I mean, that would be.
You know what? I think we should be first to hop on this train. I really do. The train is at the station right now. Nobody's really around it. Nobody's buying tickets. I think we should start to go to the office like, all right.
It's getting
before there's a huge line, before the train is packed, the Derek White trade train, right? The trading Derek White train. I think that sounds better, right? Trading Derek White train. I think that's going to start to become a thing because he's not performing up to the standard consistently now of what one would expect from Derek White. He's over the age of 30. He's not getting any younger. He objectively just looks worse from what he did 2 years ago. Okay, now that could be circumstances, whatever you want to point out. Big contract. Is there maybe a world where the Celtics look to get better by trading away Derek White? I think 100%.
Or maybe
you have to consider it.
I think would be a team trying to get. I think would be a team trying to get better, and I think that would be the way you would have to market him. You would have to put the price tag on him, being like, "Hey, this guy is the reason we won a championship 2 years ago. Hey, get him all before you get into the playoffs. If you want to win a championship this year, come get Derek White from us now."
Well, I'm gonna stop you guys there because while I personally believe Derek White, I believe it's the idea of entertaining a trade isn't the worst idea. I don't know if you have a framework of a team that allows you to do so. Because say if you move off of White and you're going to need another piece, right? Contractually, Memphis is under the first apron, so they can't give up more than they're getting, right? So you do that, and you bring in Jaren Jackson, you get rid of Hauser, you get rid of White, right? Okay, so you're still left with this weird dynamic of Pritchard and Simons. Does that lead to a Simons deal elsewhere where maybe you bring back less contractual value, but more of a better roster fit? And then I think you're the one that's unrealistic because you're essentially reworking the team mid-season. And 2, I think you're just leaving the potential for too many holes. So I don't know. I think it's just gets a little funky there.
The versatility is where the issue comes into play for me, because potentially getting rid of Derek White would open up the world of, well, now we're relying on Pritchard a lot more. We're relying on, I mean, even like, let's say Brown, for example. I mean, I'm looking at this long term too with Tatum back in the lineup. So thinking, okay, if Tatum's going to be in the lineup, because I see the guard position is caked right now for the Celtics. You have 4 guys out there who can really handle the ball, and 3 of them are similar in the ways they handle the ball: Brown, Pritchard, and Simons. The 4th guy is Derek White. Now he's a little bit different than those first 3. You know, those first 3 are more scorers than say Derek White. Well, then you add Tatum into that mix. I mean, he's part of the Simons, Pritchard, Brown, Tatum. I mean, he would be the scorer / ball handler, initiating for the offense. So if you add Tatum into that mix with Simons, Brown, Pritchard, and White, it's like, okay, to me, Simons doesn't, certainly right now, Simons is the odd man out right now. They're giving those positions to White, Pritchard, and Brown. Quite simply put. And the 2 guys who are handling the ball, scoring the most, it's Pritchard and Brown. Well, Simons, his specialty is being taken away. He's not a defense. And that's where it's the redundancy and the math behind this team. It's and balance. Franco, you talked about this a lot over the summer. Simons is not a good defensive player. He's just not. He's not a ceiling raiser on the defensive end of the floor, say like a guy like Drew Holiday, right? Well, Simons isn't a ceiling raiser on the defensive end of the floor, yet offensively, his best talent is taken away by Pritchard and Brown handling and scoring the ball. So his best attribute is taken away on the offensive end of the floor. He's forced to play off ball, and then defensively, he's giving you negative production, essentially. And that's an issue. And that was Norman Powell's issue, actually, with the Clippers. Talking about the Clippers real quick for a second. Norman Powell, that John Collins trade over the summer, I felt like that was a balancing act for the Clippers. Down the stretch of games, Norman Powell, his best attribute was scoring, less of a defensive player. Well, down the stretch of playoff games, who's scoring the ball? Who's with the ball constantly? It's Harden. It's Kawhi. Norman Powell's relegated within the offense. And then defensively, he's not giving you as much value. Well, all of a sudden, he becomes less of an effective player. The same thing is going on here with Simons and the Celtics right now, and he's already the odd man out. He'd be the odd man out within a Tatum world, but then now Pritchard has been elevated into his role. Do you take away Pritchard's role, or do you simply say, well, now Derek White, he's a different type of ball handler, but we're now going to trade him away to potentially bolster the big man core, or even the wing position, and then you start kind of building from there. The only problem not the only one, but a problem I do see in that as well is if you're trading Derek White away with the advertising of, well, you're going to get better with Derek White and you're going to have to give us a bunch of assets for Derek White. Well, all those assets, what are they going to be? Are they going to be players that the Celtics can win with right away? Are they going to be draft picks the Celtics can arsenal into their future? I mean, it's confusing on how exactly. I think it would have to be a Derek White trade would have to be almost value for value, and the Celtics are somehow splitting the value. It's another one of those, I think, if the Celtics are trying to split the contract. And I think it would be something like you get 2 players who are perceived worse than Derek White, but you're still getting those 2 valuable players who can play in a rotation, plus maybe a first-round pick. That's probably the package for Derek White, and can you compete with that? And are those players versatile enough to play in a championship contending lineup?
Call me crazy. If I'm Memphis, I prefer Simons. Just because, and this is nothing against White, I think he is still absolutely a high valued asset in the league, but it's like, what is White going to do for rebuilding Memphis team, right? I mean, maybe later down the line, he's another asset, but again, White's value is only deteriorating. He's on the, he's over the age of 30. So I think he's got about 2 or 3 years left of value. And then you really start to see him kind of go on the Drew Holiday career path. So if I'm Memphis, I prefer Simons, but again, it's going to have to be a conversation that we monitor over the course of the season. Guys, the Celtics tip off here shortly against the Brooklyn Nets in a 2-game series tonight, obviously being the first of that matchup. So what are we expecting here, and what do we need to see out of Boston for this matchup?
Well, let's see. The Nets are the worst team in the league. Michael Porter Jr. Was that a bold statement, folks? Was that? I mean, seriously, they were the Nets. They were underdogs versus the Wizards. Seriously, like how the Wizards, they're favored over one team. It's the Brooklyn Nets, the entire league. But Michael Porter Jr., he's been balling out for the Nets, and for me, it's one of those situations you give the guy the ball constantly, he's going to score some points. He's actually a phenomenal rebounder. Michael Porter Jr. is. I've always been on Michael Porter Jr. on that front. I've always been his contract doesn't match his value. That doesn't mean he's not a valuable player. The Nets own no direction whatsoever. They're basically trying to lose. This is not really a game we can look at and say, well, the Celtics need to do this, and that. No, the Celtics need to go out there and execute. They need to rebound the ball, in which they did, like how they did in this game. If we look down below, I mean, they faced a pretty sizable team with some rebounders. They did it well against the Nets. There's not going to be much resistance, but the Celtics still have to go out there, give their effort in that category. I mean, I would get this. I don't want to say this is a great opportunity for the Celtics to go out and play a consistent 48 minutes of basketball, doing everything they want to do well, because that's where the Nets are. The Nets are, you playing the Nets right now, should be a practice game. Take them seriously, got to execute against them. That's the whole point here is Celtics, everything they want to get done on the offensive end of the floor, the defensive end of the floor, they can get done in this game. It's all about effort, execution, game plan of what exactly they want to achieve tonight from a rotational perspective. And at the end of the night, it's going to be about just getting the win, scoring more points than the Brooklyn Nets. And I don't think any of us doubt the Celtics can't do that, or doubt the Celtics can do that tonight.
Yeah, the Brooklyn Nets were they were the all-stars of our NBA draft special we filmed. I mean, 5 first-round draft picks. They took my boy Danny Wolf off the board from us. This is our revenge game. But looking at their roster, this is one of the very few games that this season that the Celtics are going to be expected to handle business, and this screams a game if you're looking for Anthony Simons to bolster a little bit of his trade value and you want to have Anthony Simons go put on a showcase, send him out against the Brooklyn Nets right now, and you have him light up the scoreboard, drop around 30 plus, and teams are like, ooh, that guy could be on our team. That guy could be on our team by February. And want to know what? A team that could be interested. A team
is that your enticed NBA GM voice?
Yeah, my Brooklyn Nets voice. Because want to know what? That's the team I'd be advertising to, is the Brooklyn Nets right now, because if there were a team that would want to look into a player like Anthony Simons, the Brooklyn Nets most likely are going to have the most free agency money and the most money to burn next offseason. And we know they're not the most talented at scoping talent, so they might be willing to burn some money on Simons. So who knows? Maybe that's another team. We could throw out plenty of potential teams that could be looking at Simons, but I mean, let your rotational players eat. And then, this isn't the game that matters. Friday is, because that's the NBA Cup game, but this one is kind of just the expedition.
I will say this. I'll say this though. I might be a little lagged. I don't know. Hopefully we're all good here. But I want to say this though. Last piece on the Nets from me. Remember last year, Baylor Shireman, great game against the Nets. That basically carried the narrative for him throughout the summer into this season. And we were pointing it out through the summer. He's not getting better at summer league. Preseason doesn't look good. This beginning of the season doesn't look great. But what we always fall back on when it comes to Baylor Shireman, remember those 2 good games against the Nets last year? You remember when he scored 20 points against the Nets and he made that 3 and he was putting up the trays to the crowd, and the Celtics are in their black uniforms, their statement uniforms. They look great. I mean, these games against the Nets, they can carry the narrative a little bit. And want to say another thing too. The league, why does the league always make us play the Nets back to back? It happens every year. It feels like. I feel like every year we play the Nets back to back.
Because they're probably the closest team to Boston. If you had to think about arena distance, I think that Barclays is probably one of the closest arenas to TD Garden. And
they even fly? Do they have to fly, or is that a bus?
They ain't busting up to Boston.
Come on. You got to take advantage of that shit whenever you can.
Anthony Simons just scored 0 points and basically didn't play for most of the game, but he makes $27 million. Like, these guys aren't taking the bus. Like, these guys are not taking the bus.
There's some camaraderie.
Imagine LeBron on the bus. Like, he's going through Hartford.
Driving down I-95.
Oh, like, sitting in traffic with a team, there's something special about that. But as for tonight, I think this is actually a very important game. You've been 500 all year. You have not sniffed the other side of the bottom under 500. You got a great opportunity here. Get 2 games over 500, win another cup game, and continue to do what you've done. If the Celtics come out like they did against the Clippers and play that brand of basketball like they have been, they'll run away with these 2 games. If they rebound hard, they push the pace, I mean, they'll run away with these 2 games. You'll get Brown playing 25 minutes. You'll get, like you said, Franco, I absolutely agree. You can showcase Simons a little bit, get him a little bit more acclimated in the rotation. You can give Jordan Walsh 35, 36 minutes. You can give Ugo some time. Maybe if you want to play Shireman those 18 spot minutes, this is the game to do so. So it's a great opportunity here. I mean, you're very, very lucky to see the Nets twice before this gauntlet of the next 4 games until you eventually see Washington. So I'm absolutely very excited to see how Boston and what Boston's approach is schematically against Brooklyn. I would love to see them play how they have been. I've been in love with their style of basketball that Mazzulla's got them playing right now. I give a lot of props to Coach Joe because he's got them doing some good things that I did not think he was able to do. And they're doing them. So now just consistently do them. Boston 7-4 since an 0-3 start, guys. You pick up 2 more and all of a sudden the vibes around the locker room, they start to shift. You're over 500. Maybe you pick up a couple wins next week. And you're next thing you know, you start to stack. That's how you stack, right? You beat the bad teams and then you stack up a couple here and there against the good teams. And next thing you know, you're winning some basketball games and you could be 5 games over 500 entering Christmas. Like, you just don't know. But this is the turning point, if there is one, for the Celtics. It starts tonight. It starts in just actually 5 minutes against the Brooklyn Nets, guys. But again, as for this post-game show, as for the Los Angeles Clippers, guys, the Celtics pick up their 2nd straight win on Sunday afternoon against the LA Clippers at the TD Garden. 121 to 118 was the final.
And as we like to say, go Celtics.